so we'll see how I do. We're excited that there's so many groups that are interested in learning more about the Chief Science Officers. I'm really excited that we also have two of our regions that are in the throes of starting a cabinet up and likely can answer questions in a much different, more salient way because they're working on it as we speak. And so we have Adrian Cole from the Great Lakes Bay ecosystem in Michigan and Allison Sweeney out in Southern Oregon. So I thought it would, looking at the roster, it looked like there was a mix of people that have heard about the CSOs and some that this would be new. And so I thought it would make sense to talk about the next steps while also giving background as we go for the intervention. But it may be helpful if people that are on the line to write in the chat message if there's certain questions along the way that you're wanting to know. While I'm speaking, I might be able to cover that when they come up. But also at the beginning, if there's certain things that you want to absolutely be sure that we do cover, please write that in so we can make sure that we do the presentation in a way that really meets your needs. But the more questions that you ask, the more that we're going to learn in terms of how is the best way or what is the best way to spread this. So some of you may have seen some of these slides before, but we did rearrange them a bit. So the first thing I wanted to do is give a little bit of a background on kind of the why that we started this. It's really, a lot of the concept's pretty simple in that we often have students talked about, people are wanting to do interventions to impact students, but how often are we actually seeing students in the mix in business meetings when people are talking about everything is for the kids? And so, do we actually see them making connections in their community? And similarly, a lot of us are working to make interventions at their school, but how often do we actually see when we have a meeting with a principal or a teacher that the students are brought in to be part of that conversation? And more importantly, we're talking about future jobs and where we really want to go as a culture. Are the students at the table with that? And so we piloted this idea a couple of years back to say, what if we actually had students elected as chief science officers to really be that ambassador for STEM at their schools? And so just to kind of make it simple, the chief science officer is a elected student that's a 6th to 12th grade student that really represents their school for STEM and innovation in their community and school. And so it's really been exciting how quickly the concept has caught on here in Arizona with the schools. When we threw it out, we were not really sure how many we would get, and we were stunned that we had about 80 elect students in the first season, and that continued to grow without too much promotion to 220 this year. And next year, we're projecting between 300 and 350 from about 140 schools. And what's most exciting is that there's 3 regions that are right in the process of planning their institutes that are going to be in June and August in Oregon, St. Louis, and Michigan. And collaboratively, they're likely going to have about 150 from 75 schools. So just to show the demographics in Arizona, the great thing is that we have a lot of schools jumping on board that have diverse demographics. With the elections, it also helps to select students that represent their population. And so we have a really good breakdown of male and female. This year, it looks like our female numbers are actually going to be higher than the males from who's registering. And we have a reasonably good distribution throughout the Valley in Phoenix and some distribution throughout the state, which we're working on. And we tend here in Arizona to get a lot more in middle school. By the breakdown, we get about 55% in middle schools. So it is a good way to get a diverse representation from that population. So what I tried to do is gear this in terms of steps of a process of what would it take to get it going. And again, I'm hoping Allison and Adrian, who are on the line, can help correct me if I'm wrong on some of these or steps that I might have missed. But I think the first step is to really assess if this is a project that is synergistic with what your STEM ecosystem and community is doing. And so we've spent a lot of time this past year narrowing down our goals to 4. And I think it really would be important that these are synergistic to what you're trying to accomplish, because we don't want this to be an added thing that now just adds a lot of time, but this helps to do what you do more effectively. So the first thing is we really are working on cultivating a pipeline of, and we say diverse STEM leaders, and that we want not just to empower students from diverse communities, females, Hispanic, African American, everybody to be more inclusive, but to really be a leader about it. So it's not just getting students to be in a STEM career, but to be advocates for the whole movement of empowering our communities to be more STEM literate. The second is to really work on collaboration skills amongst the elected CSOs. And we see that as a really important opportunity, as there's a lot that they can accomplish as a collective cabinet. So often when we think of student government, it's typically on at the level of the school, whereas here they can start to represent their school district or their region of the state, or possibly the entire state, or in theory, as we grow as a collective group, a national cabinet, or maybe even a global cabinet of students. But having the ability to collaborate is a key goal for the program. And then a key part is to really have a goal to enrich STEM culture in schools and to increase that career awareness. And we find it's really important that the students are the champions of this piece, and to help bring what they learn as chief science officers to their communities, so that it's really all about the pay it forward, not just about the students that are part of the program. And then finally, it's about really increasing that student voice in the conversation about STEM. So for example, on the pic we're showing in the PowerPoint, these two girls are from a school called Alhambra High School in Central Phoenix. And we were awarded a small grant from our local newspaper, and they have a day where the recipients of the grant come and talk to their employees about what the program is. And so we stood out more than anybody, because we actually had the real recipients, talking and doing a fabulous job engaging the community members. One of them was interesting. She actually cried. She was so touched by one of the students. And so it's just really having those students at conferences and discussions to really be part of that. So those are some really core facets of the program. So if those goals are synergistic, then the step 2 is really an important step, is to confirm that you have the capacity to take this on. And I think this is a really key step. We've had, so far there's about a dozen regions that have expressed interest, and some are on a different time frame than others. But what I have noticed is the 3 communities that are moving forward have had consistency in terms of their leadership structure, have been able to garner some level of investment to get going, and have had a really strong connection with schools to be able to garner that interest to get the project launched. So in schools, just to kind of go over 3 of the key capacity pieces, the CSOs really are serving as that ambassador for STEM. And so there's a lot of things that the schools are asked to do, and it's important that the group helping to launch it has that connectivity and ability to kind of inspire the schools to follow through. And so in terms of the CSO's role, they're encouraging STEM with their peers, they're connecting with STEM professionals, and they're really helping to support on-campus opportunities. So these might be existing opportunities, or it could be future opportunities that they create. But in terms of the commitments, these are really important to note when you're going along, is that we're looking for what we call a rainmaker, or the groups that get it going, to identify about 20 to 25 schools to get going. We know this is different depending upon the regions. So for example, Allison, who's in Southern Oregon, it's a rural area. So getting 20 to 25 is really more challenging than us, which we can pick one school district and we're gonna have 20 to 25 schools. Or Tampa Bay, I think, is on the phone. They're one county district. They're probably gonna have that in one meeting. But the importance is that the schools are willing to embrace the process of a CSO. And there are some key infrastructural changes that they need to agree to. So for example, one thing that's really core to the program, and we're working through lessons that we're learning in terms of the changes that the schools need to make, is it's important that they select the CSOs through a general election. And that if we're really touting the importance of student voice and these students are representing their peers, then we find it important that the students are in fact having that voice in terms of who is selected. They need to support the CSOs in events that they may do on campus. The CSOs take field trips, for example, to be in those business meetings. They need to be willing to do that. And we have found initially we were not pushing the idea of a point of contact, but we found that is absolutely critical, that the school has somebody that can really have some level of oversight and ability to help monitor the students' progress. And right now we're working on kind of requirements, almost like Boy Scouts, to help ensure that the CSOs are meeting some key requirements to move forward. In Arizona, we have an activities fee that helps us to offset the costs of running it. It doesn't cover everything, but it helps to ensure the schools have skin in the game and that we don't completely go in the red. And we found that to be very effective. However, some of the regions such as Oregon and Michigan have different cost structures of what they are charging. But we recommend charging something, even if you're able to bankroll the whole thing, so that there is some skin in the game. And then what's really important is to really embrace the position and leverage it as a key thing for their school culture. So Adrian or Allison, I don't know if either of you wanted to add anything in terms of what you found with the school commitments. All right, then.
Allison, I think you were muted for a second, so if there's something that you wanted to contribute.
Did you ask me a question, Jeremy?
Did you want to add anything about the school commitments that I might have missed?
The only thing I would add about school commitments is it's really important to follow through after you have that initial meeting with the schools, because they have so much going on that it's just going to get pushed to the bottom of the pile. So it's really important to email them or call them a respectful amount of times. You don't want to nag them. If you're not following through, you're never going to get them to sign on the dotted line, which is kind of the one thing that was difficult with us this year.
That's a good piece of advice.
There's a couple questions coming into Jeremy. I don't know if you want to take them now or if you want to, is that okay if I read them?
Let's see if I can, I don't see them. Is it coming up on the chat?
It's coming up in the questions box. So one question is, the ecosystem is the sponsor of the chief science officers, and we would recruit the school to be involved. And the other question is, the fee is charged by the ecosystem to the school.
I think so the question is who is actually collecting the money is the question, right? And I think. Yeah,
actually, let me, go ahead. I can also unmute the person that's asking. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So Carrie, I'm going to go ahead and Carrie McGann, do you want to ask your questions and, have a dialogue with Jeremy if that's helpful?
Yes, thanks. Hi, Jeremy. This is Carrie from Delran STEM Ecosystem. So my question is, so the ecosystem, Delran being the ecosystem, we are the sponsors of these chief science officers. So I'm going to reach out to 20 to 25 schools in the area and recruit. So am I charging the fee? The ecosystem is charging the schools a fee. So it's kind of two questions in one.
I mean, I think we're not going to dictate how you collect the money. And so, for example, we use a nonprofit called the Arizona Technology Council Foundation, which is a 501c3, okay. And we use that as our fiscal base to charge. And so some of the ecosystems have that is their organization, whereas others, it's going to be one of their ecosystem partners. I know in conversations with Tampa Bay, the core partner running it may be the school district, and so there may not be as much of a need to even have a fee because they can build it in internally into their structure. And so a lot of that we can figure it out to go. But from our case, for example, we're going to have, we're going to probably bring in over $100,000 in revenue, or is it revenue in money to help us run it. And that allows us to have a full-time person. And so that's an important thing, where others, they may be able to get a sponsor to cover it. But I do find it's easier to get the sponsors to support the fee if they see that the schools have some skin in the game.
Thank you, Jeremy. And then I have questions about the voting process too, but maybe you're going to address that later on, or is now a good time?
We can talk about the voting process. I don't think I have a slide in there about voting, so that would be a good thing to talk about. Sure.
So I'm curious as to how that happens, if you know how schools do that. So it's an electoral process. Do the students that are aiming to be the CSOs, are they speaking to the student body? Is it almost like a school representative election? I'm just trying to think how I might run that.
So we don't dictate to the school exactly how they do the election, because there's so many different ways that schools have student government or how they want to actually have representation. And so the main way that we have been suggesting is that it has to be the selection from the general student body. We've seen different formats of election where they do anything from students are recorded on a video and they put it up during homeroom and students vote in homeroom, and it's simple as that, to having them be integrated fully into the student government process, and they go on stage and they speak in front of all their peers and they run like any other position. We've seen some schools do ballots where they have to actually get enough signatures to be on to be voted. We've seen some do secret ballot where they have to write a paragraph about why they want to be CSOs, and then everybody in the school gets the ballot with their paragraphs without knowing who wrote the statement. And so we've seen a lot of different formats. One thing that we are learning here is we added a question to the students asking them how they were elected. And we have found that even though we've been very clear with the schools that there must be an election, we have found that the teachers or the principals try to skirt the system and just appoint somebody. And so our process for that is that we're not going to, they've already paid their fee, the student's already in the position, we're not going to create a huge political fallout, but we are going to have we're going to meet with every one of those sites and have a conversation and put a lot more materials to make sure that they're very clear about what the election is. But that's an interesting thing with the sites, is that there is an interesting inherent distrust that the sites have often about an elected kid that may not be in their control.
Okay, thank you. Just the examples that you gave were helpful for me to think about how that might work within our ecosystem. Thanks, Jeremy.
Allison and Adrian, have you had any experiences so far with the elections that you want to add?
Oh wow, that's tricky. Sorry, I'm on my phone and the computer. We've kind of had a similar.
Allison, you're gonna have to do one or the other, otherwise you get that feedback.
It's echoing. Okay.
Yeah.
Close.
Allison, do you want to try now? I see you on the computer. You might have lost her, Jeremy.
All right. Adrian, do you have anything you want to add? All right, sounds like I have it covered. Okay. So the second part, we talked about CSOs in the schools. The second part is that they have a role in the community. And so we have several examples that they're really out there. We want them to be working with community members. So we've had them moderate panels. We've had them at PR, kickoff events for like press conferences. We've had them even be keynote speakers and moderators for a whole conference. We've had them meet with U.S. Congress, representatives or their mayors, but really to get them heard. We have cabinet meetings that are in the community. So for example, we work with our governor's office, and they actually get an opportunity to present to the governor about their ideas. And we have dozens of what we call SciTech Jedi to interface with them that are from businesses and communities. And so that's a role that we actually call it SciTech Jedi, that really work to enhance that experience. And what we find is it provides a easy way to get a lot of the business professionals that want to connect with schools, something that is more, it's a lot simpler to get the process started. And they like that one-on-one contact. And they also like that, knowing that working with these students, they have the ability to reach a bigger audience by focusing on these kids that are the ambassadors for that site. So these are just some summary ideas to ask yourself about community commitments. And I think we found the ecosystems are really effective for this sort of opportunity because a lot of these partnerships are in place. And so can the partnerships be leveraged to have the CSOs speak at conferences and workshops? Can it be used to get the SciTech Jedi to work with the CSOs? And can you help to enhance opportunities for these students to be on the TV or write it, in the newspaper or blogs or those sort of opportunities? And then secondly, which is, I think, a really key part of the ecosystem to help draw resources. And so kind of putting in the time, talent, treasure analogy, is there time for staff to engage in the processes from these companies? Is there talent that's willing to help make an introduction to another organization and really put their heart into it? And are they willing to help provide sponsorship or really core trades, such as we get our institute fees basically waived in a couple of the universities that we hold it at, or we can get our printing covered, and a lot of things that would add a cost, we get those waived. And then the final piece is the internal capacity of your organization, whoever might be that one. So a question was thrown out about, do we have the ability to assess fees, and do we have the ability to have a person that can be dedicated to work on this project? And so I think the two main costs to run this are people time, and as Allison mentioned, you got to follow up with the school. You got to make sure that they commit. You got to go out to the school and meet with them and making sure that they know what's going on. And then there's a lot of details. And what has helped in case of Southern Oregon with Allison is she is their AmeriCorps Vista fellow, and so they've been able to have her focus her project on getting the CSO program up and running in Southern Oregon. And then the second commitment is really thinking about where you would have that institute training on, in your region. So is there a location that you can have it waived? And so I know that, for example, in St. Louis, they're going to do it at their Challenger Space Center. We do it here at a local university. And so if those can be waived, that also decreases a lot of that need for costs. So maybe we should stop here if there's any questions that have arisen.
There are not any questions that I can see, Jeremy. I do know that Allison and Adrian look like they're both kind of trying to get back in so they can offer some input. So we want to be patient with them.
Okay.
Can you hear me at all? This is
Yes.
Adrian. You can hear me now?
Yes. Hello,
Yay.
Adrian.
Okay, perfect. All right. Hi, everybody. Sorry, I was trying to talk earlier, and apparently there was a problem with my mic on the computer. So I'm calling in now, so I can see it on my computer, and you can hear me now over the phone. This is fabulous.
Great. And then
yeah.
we actually do have another question, too. Sorry, go ahead.
Nope, that's fine. Go for it.
Carrie, another one from Carrie McGann. I'm just going to go ahead and unmute her, and then
So I think I heard, hi everybody, I think I heard Jeremy say that the location for the training of the CSOs is held at a university. Was that correct, Jeremy?
It can be in a lot of different locations. So we've had ours at university 3 out of 4 times, and one time we had it at a retreat up in the woods. I know that St. Louis is having theirs at a museum, so at their Challenger Space Center. So Adrian, maybe you can respond to that where you guys are having yours.
Yeah, so we're having ours at the local university. It's actually where I work through, so I'm not employed through the ecosystem office. I'm employed through the university that's just down the street as their STEM program manager, and the CSO project is my main gig now. So we are holding it at the university at the end of August before all the university students come back to campus, and just a couple of weeks before high school students and middle school students start back to school here. So we are fortunate because we've already had a very strong relationship with the schools in our area. And so reaching out and getting 20 to 25 schools to participate really hasn't been a challenge for us. And we also have really strong connections with the community already, just because of being the local university. So I think it's working out really well to have it here on campus.
Thank you.
And Allison, where were you guys having your institute, if you can remind me?
We are doing our institute at Southern Oregon University. They co-sponsored with us, so that's giving us some free classroom space and discounts on the dorms and stuff. So we're pretty excited.
Okay, so a lot of, yeah, so it seems like university is a predominant location, but it doesn't have to be. You know, we like the idea of it doing it, you know, having it in a space that's interesting. We have had our cabinet meetings at our state capitol. We've had one at the one of our local companies' airplane hangar, so Honeywell. They have a big airplane hangar, and we held it there. We're talking about having something at Boeing.
Okay.
All right, so I did put down a theoretical. A lot of people ask about budgets, and this was from a grant that we put together a while back, and so some of it is a little bit outdated, but it gives. The idea was for more of a scaling, but I think it still shows that, you know, when you're looking at event costs, it's not that bad, and a lot of these can be waived through trade, but we find it's important to show what the costs are to, especially the schools, when we're asking for a little bit of money. So if we're projecting, okay, when we have less CSOs and, you know, the overall investment of them is, you know, over $1,000. They're a lot more likely to provide that type of support. And so, you know, the biggest cost is really having somebody there to help manage that and to be there for that. And so, for example, in Southern Oregon, they're able to leverage Allison as a Vista, then all those personnel costs are now covered, and there's less an expense to run the program. And the revenue, how we've seen a revenue models for, at least here in Arizona, we collect activities fees, and we see the ability to start increasing as we increase partnerships, for example, between SciTech Jedi and schools, maybe adopting a school, we can start garnering support to have school site sponsors or regional sponsors that might help put their name on the entire cabinet. So Adrian's been phenomenal at getting support from Dow Chemical, and in St. Louis, they've gotten support from Toyota. And then, as mentioned before, trade sponsorships. And the other thing that we're working on is having national sponsors as well to really build infrastructure for us to have communication systems and common messaging and working on curriculum. And we see that national group as something that, as the different Rainmakers join, to have different roles in the national organization. So our hope is that, you know, national is encompassed by Adrian and Allison and myself and others that begin to join, so that it's more of a flat structure. So that's a big, I think this should be step 3. But a really important step that we found is we had the Rainmakers come out and visit us in Arizona for the institutes. And I think that would be a really, that was something that we all talked about, was something that was really critical for what we heard back. We have an institute coming up on July 18th to 21st and at Grand Canyon University, and then we have a second one in fall. I would highly recommend the summer one. Is a little bit stronger, just a lot more emphasis, more students. Allison and Adrian, it'd be great to have your thoughts about the experience coming to the Summer Institute and the importance of it.
So this is Adrian, I was able to attend the Phoenix one last summer for a day. I wasn't able to make it to the whole institute, And hindsight is 2020, but I wish I would have been able to make the whole institute. I think it would have been great to see it kind of start to finish and be able to attend more of the sessions, especially now that we're instituting it here this year. So I think it was really incredibly beneficial to be able to go and meet some folks in person like Jeremy and Susan and such, and then also just kind of get a feel for the energy in the rooms and get an idea for the different sessions that the students go through and the different training events that they have, as well as sitting down as a Rainmaker group after the Summer Institute and talking through kind of where we see things headed. So I thought that was really beneficial.
So,
Jeremy, we have another question. Is that okay if we take that?
yes.
About the, okay. Go ahead. You're in.
Hi, so it's Carrie again. So if we came to Phoenix, Jeremy, I know we talked about that before. So my team would be an observer. We're just trying to help our own institution with the planning, correct?
Right. And what we tried to do before is I put together a list of a ton of questions that I thought might be good to address while you're there. And then we met we set times about 4 or 5 times to meet as a Rainmaker group to talk about, what was going on and how they may, work to roll it out. And I believe that helped to just get everybody that chance to kind of process the information. And then let me pass to a slide here. We had a workshop that we did after. One of them we did before the Institute, one we did after, but we pulled in different panels of collaborators that were part of the program so that you could ask the people directly those questions. So for example, we had 3 male high school teachers, and that most of them we have are actually not males, but anyway, we had a panel of our some phenomenal educator supports. We had in the middle, we had our representatives from Intel and GCU. And then we had CSOs to help answer questions as well. And so it provided them the opportunity to ask those stakeholders those questions. And so, just to give an idea of the experience at the Institute, the CSOs will work on things like teamwork, strategic planning. So how do they actually put a plan together of what they're going to do during the year? And this was a really unique opportunity. That slide on the right is they were learning networking, but they got to practice it. And so we were fortunate last summer to have Megan Smith out. And so when she came, almost all of them, they got business cards, and she ended up getting a stack of over 100 business cards. And so I saw it happening in action. So I captured that shot, which I think was pretty cool. We have some keynotes from people from like Orbital ATK that give crisis examples. How do you speak in crisis situations for public relations? They practice being on camera. They practice writing skills. And so just a lot of experiences just to model what you would be seeing and what they'd be doing, but also to think about what might it look like in your area. And that's Allison in the middle. With Cal. I don't think I have Adrian on there.
I'm okay with that, Jeremy.
So is there other questions about summer?
No, thank you from me. Thanks. I'm okay.
So it's a commitment to come out, but I found everybody who has been out has said that it has been very important for them to learn it in person. As we grow, we hopefully have the ability to, it's the first season where, Oregon and Michigan and St. Louis are doing their institutes, but after they have finished their first season, then we're going to push to have people visit out there as well, so that it's a lot closer for some people. But this year we will have it in Arizona, and this year we expect to have about 200 to 250 for our summer institute. So the third step is to engage as a practice group for this inaugural year, and we're using the ecosystem and terminology as a practice group, but I think that is kind of how we are working. as this team. And so we have a map around the country of where people have shown interest, and this is this past year. And so we know that, and some of the groups are looking to do more of a soft launch, like in Kansas City, Colorado, and others are going to wait a season to roll it out. And so we're learning a lot in terms of what the needs and the resources are. And so the hope is, if you're excited to be part of this, we want to start getting you engaged and having that conversation about what is the next thing to do. But as a practice group, and the reason, kind of like what type of support would we get, we really want to, we feel that this intervention is going to reach its most potential by more groups taking it on and really innovating and having some, consistency in terms of what we do nationally, so that there is a recognized brand of being a chief science officer. So we've been having monthly phone calls, and we've done a couple special sessions around fundraising. We're now working with the 3 groups that are working to have their institutes and meeting about every other week on webinar to have conversations about the summer institute schedule and the curriculum and the workshops. We've also been working on a Rainmaker guide that is a work in progress, but the idea is to take in what we're learning from everybody to have a more systematic manual of what to do. And then we are working to have a CSO come from Arizona to each of the summer institutes as an exchange, so that we have the ability to have those second years impact the new students, but also really solidify a working relationship amongst the cabinets, as we're hoping to have opportunities to connect nationally on projects. We're working on a national website. It's kind of a round 1 is up. It needs a lot of work, but we have the basic back-end infrastructure pretty close to being complete. And then we're willing as our team to help however is needed. So if it's follow-up phone calls to really talk through a lot of questions more in detail, if you want to come out, whatever you need, we really want to talk it through to help you succeed. Then I put this slide together thinking through some of the experiences from this past year about some important milestones to keep in mind. And this is something that I think we learned from this past year, is that there's really some important things that you should have in place if you're hoping to have the CSOs ready to go for next summer. Then by December break, it's important that you would have visited an institute. You would have already talked with a lot of your community members to show that you have that buy-in, especially the schools, getting them to tentatively say, hey, yeah, this is a good idea, and then have really thought through the capacity needs. Do you have the ability to have somebody work on this project? I think we gotta mute somebody. And then by spring, that's the part where we really need to start working on electing the CSOs, having identified where your institute is, what date it is, and then really starting to hone in on your logistics and curriculum, and then having, if you need the seed funding, having secured that. And I think that is what I observed was some of the pieces that work for the groups that are implementing now, and some of the other ones that are needing more time. And I think that, oh wait, that's actually it for the formal presentation.
So I think we have another question. Ebony, I'm gonna go ahead and unmute you. Is that okay? Ebony, do you want to ask your question? Sorry. So I don't know if she's able to speak, but it says, I'm certain NLSA in Shreveport, Louisiana will be willing to get on board. It will bring this to the group in the next meeting. So actually, is there information, Jeremy, then that you want to share about contacting you if they have additional questions, or if there are going to be any upcoming calls or things that they should, be aware of or be able to join?
I should probably put that somewhere. Let's see if I can just write it on one of the slides. Let's just do this. So let me put my contact. Or my phone number. So I'm happy to talk with anybody individually afterwards on, kind of, I think each situation or where you're at or what you're experiencing is different. I would recommend the first thing is to come out for an institute as a really good first step, because then you have several days to ask all the questions as you're experiencing it and processing what's happening. But it'd be great to hear people's reactions if they're kind of what they're thinking at this point.
Yeah, I'm happy to see if I'm allowed to unmute everybody if they have that capacity. The other thing too, I don't want to put you on the spot, Jeremy, but I know you have monthly calls, and I know but those are for more established rainmakers. Are there going to be calls or anything that you plan to institute for people who might be interested in just continuing to discuss this, and if people are planning on coming out there, or
we can do that. Well, we broke up the monthly call with everybody, figuring it made more sense to break it into two, and so we need to get another time scheduled for a monthly call. We need to get another time scheduled for the monthly call for everybody that wants to learn and join. The hope was to segment it based upon where people are at, so that we're providing content that meets people's needs and where they're at in terms of the progression of the implementation stage.
Right. And then I went ahead and unmuted anybody who I could that wasn't, super noisy. So I don't know if people are welcome to share any thoughts or, speak freely now if they'd like. I was able to do it.
Jeremy and Angie, this is Steve Thorpe at Southern Oregon. I work with Allison. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Good. Okay. I just want to say thank you for holding this session, and I think your presentation with the PowerPoint slide presentation, and then the comments that Adrian and Allison were making as people actively involved in the new areas is right on. I really want to support the concept that you started with, that you have to have the external capacity within the schools, but also the internal capacity within the STEM ecosystems to be able to accomplish this. And we've been very fortunate in Southern Oregon to have a team of people with Alice coming in as a VISTA volunteer. She's been absolutely fabulous, and we really appreciate all that she's doing to help lead this. A couple of the others of us are participating, and that's part of what you all emphasize from Arizona with your experience, that a team effort is important, because the example of getting in touch with the schools, it won't be just one person doing that, but a group of people with all the contacts and with all the relationships that people already have, to make use of those relationships to build those connections and to recruit schools and people within schools, and then to get those processes in place to elect those CSOs becomes very important. So that sort of team effort, I think that you talked about is exceedingly important, and I want people to be aware of that as well. The other thing that's been beneficial for us is we've had some state support. You were talking about various foundations and business and industry helping out. We've had some state support that's helped us in Southern Oregon, in addition to the great support from the VISTA program with Allison. So I just wanted to add those few comments and say that I think your presentation is right on, and we're happy to be part of this, and we're tickled to death to have Allison here working with us.
Thanks for the comments.
Steve, would you be willing to share just very briefly about some of the state support that you have behind the program?
Sure. The state of Oregon, it's a libertarian state. We vote liberal on social issues and conservative on fiscal issues. But with the small amount of revenue that we do get into the state, the state leadership decided to, this is the legislature and the chief education office and the governor's office, to allocate the money for 11 STEM hubs around the state. So we are one of those 11 STEM hubs. So the STEM ecosystem here is actually the statewide ecosystem, but the state leadership, whenever they saw a presentation by Jeremy and the CSO team at one of the national STEM ecosystems meetings, they came back and said, this is a great idea to have student voice. And they asked us in Southern Oregon, because we were doing some things similar to this already, if we wanted to participate. And then we said yes. So, Jeremy's statement early on about, does this match with your STEM ecosystem goals? That's absolutely critical and essential as well. So then some of the money that comes to us for our infrastructure, we were able to use that money from the state to help with some aspects of this, in addition to the VISTA money. The state leadership here in Oregon helped us to approach the national, I forget what Alexis Steinus' organization is, but anyway, it's the group that helps to get the VISTA applications in and get VISTA volunteers. And so again, that was a coordinated effort between the state of Oregon and our STEM hub down here in Southern Oregon. So it's state money that was allocated on a biennial basis, and the legislature's meeting now, and because of the good work that's been done thus far over the past 2 years, including this CSO project, the legislature, we're certain, is going to come up with some additional money to keep us going for these kinds of projects.
Great, thank you so much, Steve.
So this is Michelle from the Newark STEAM ecosystem, and I have a question for Jeremy. Would you recommend not starting if you have fewer than 20 some odd schools to get started with, number one? And then number two, in the communities that are doing this, have they chosen to focus and said, okay, we're just going to work with middle school, or we're just going to work with high school, or in the communities, or are they doing a combination of both?
So I think if you have a place where you'd start with 20, I think that 20 could probably work. I would probably caution to go much starting. I think that's probably at the base, just because you want that buzz, that brand, and the ability for them to have, kind of that team. And so, like, for example, groups like we only have 5 schools and we want to start it, there isn't much of kind of a cadre of students that can collectively impact. And so I think 20 could probably pull off. The other thing you might consider is, so we one thing that I think hopefully it wasn't intentionally made that clear, but we really push the idea of having at least 2 CSOs per school so they can work as a team. But theoretically, you could have more. And so let's say you did 3 per school, then you would have more students that way as well. In terms of the question about the grade level, we tend to, I'm a huge fan of directed evolution. So we throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. And so not every school is going to want to play the first year. And in reality, I'm not sure we want the schools that are really on the fence to be part of the first year, because there's going to be things that don't go right, and the ones that are ready to jump in tend to be more flexible with changes. But we have been working with some school districts that have middle and high school, and they love the idea of having the students connect in their region so that the students that are at an elementary school that feeds into the high school can connect, and that helps them to establish that synergy. And in the districts where they're separate, they like it even more because they often don't have the strong communications with their feeder districts, and this gives them something tangible to work on. I don't know if Allison or Adrian want to add anything to that.
So we are fairly rural here in Michigan as well. We have pockets of urban areas, but even our urban areas are nothing like Phoenix or New York City or anything like that. For example, one of our urban cities just has one school district within that city, and then they have 2 high schools, 2 middle schools, and a handful of elementary schools. So each of their high schools has 1,500 kids in it maybe. So, I mean, overall, we don't have a large number of districts or a large number of schools within a single district in this area. We decided to start with a 3-county region that kind of surrounds our university. And I think that's where our strongest support system has been, and our strongest connection with schools and industries as well in the area have been within those 3 counties. So we're kind of starting within 3 counties here with, I think we have 24 schools involved, something like that, and we're pretty close to the 50 CSOs that we were aiming for. We're also looking at 2 CSOs per school, though some schools have up to 4. And so that way they can have that collaboration that Jeremy was talking about. But in a rural region, it's a little challenging to get more than that unless we branch out further geographically. And for us, we just weren't ready to do that on our first year. Our summer institute is not overnight. So the students are only coming from at most a half an hour away from the university. So they're just going to come for the day as opposed to staying overnight in the dorms this year. Just as a kind of a soft launch, but harder than the soft launches that Jeremy was talking about earlier with places like Colorado. So I think that's working well for us. And then as long as it goes well this year, then we plan to branch out to other counties next year, and then branch out even further the year after that. So eventually kind of work our way across the state as our long-term plan, 5-year goal or something like that. But right now we wanted to start close to home. And I think that's going really well in our area.
Great, thank you.
So there's one other question too that's also speaking to maybe some smaller schools that are in a smaller city that has about 30 schools and they're closing schools. Is there a different approach perhaps for smaller cities that anybody else wants to add input on?
Well, I think here in Michigan, we are facing some areas where the schools are listed as priority schools with our State Department of Education. If they don't, turn things around, then they may possibly have a state takeover of the school or close the schools down. We have not had a lot of success, I'll be honest, in getting buy-in for the program from those very struggling schools, just because they obviously have a lot of other things on their plate. That being said, we do have some low socioeconomic schools participating in the program where, all of their students receive free breakfast and lunch every day, as well as an after-school snack, which is really like a dinner to take home with them because of the low SES in the area. So we've been able to get some of those schools on board as long as they aren't listed as a priority school with the state. And I think one of the things that's really beneficial for us is that we do have seed funding from Dow Chemical where we actually don't have to charge the schools anything. And I know that's different from Arizona, but we don't have the tax credits that Arizona does either. So the legislature is a little bit different here in Michigan and dealing with the Department of Education and tax credits and such. So the structure is different. So we kind of branched off our own path there to be able to reach some of those lower socioeconomic status schools and regions in our area, just so that we can make sure that this program is hopefully leveraged across those areas as much as possible, at least.
And Oregon is doing the same thing. We weren't getting a lot of schools when we still had the $400 fee involved. And then we found out that there was kind of a confusion between my organization and a few people, and we were able to find the funding for the CSO fee. So these first couple this year and probably next year, we won't be charging the schools. And then when we do end up charging them, we're going to have to take a look at that $400 cost and kind of evaluate what all goes into that. And we might change that price tag when we start charging the schools, because it just wasn't working when we were saying, oh, the cost is, it's actually $1,000 per CSO, but we charge schools $400 per CSO. It just wasn't working. They weren't signing up because they couldn't afford it.
Jeremy, you have about 3 minutes. I don't know if there are other questions or if you are okay wrapping up and your information's up there. So thank you. If people have questions, they can contact Jeremy.
Yeah, I mean, from our standpoint, we're excited about the interest. I think, you know, I personally love jumping on new projects and being able to innovate. And I'd encourage, like, if you're, you know, I'd say now is a good time that if you like to be kind of at that stage of making the changes and being part of it, you know, come on board. I think the part that's kind of exciting and risky at the same time is that nobody has done this sort of thing to our knowledge. And so it's it's kind of fun that we're creating what it is. And so I'm happy to, again, follow up with whomever. Just send me an email and we can set up a time to go through more specifics. But hopefully I don't know if this presentation provided the information that people were looking for, but if not, let me know what else we can provide.
And you can let me know as well. I will put this is Veronica Gonzalez with Ties. Although it says that my name is Angie, I can put my email address as well and cell phone number in the chat box if you have questions. I'm happy to relay and talk to Jeremy as well and get anything organized.
And then also wanted to do a shout out to both Allison and Adrian for joining and helping the team on this. Your perspectives are so important to the conversation. So thank you both.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me on the call today.
Thanks for having us, and thanks for all your help.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, everybody.
All right. Bye-bye.